in a corner of the world that maps forgot. Far beyond where roads end and just before the sky begins to hum, there lived a forest that listened. It didn't speak, not exactly. But if you stood still in the hush of evening, you might feel it breathe. A gentle sigh through the branches, the creak of bark settling into sleep, the soft rustle of dreams brushing past your ears like moth wings. This was whispering wood, and it was old. So old that even the stones had grown wise from listening. Few knew it existed, and fewer still dared to wander inside. But if you did, if you walked just so, with soft steps and a curious heart, and if the moon was high and kind that night, you might find something wonderful. Not a castle, not a treasure, but a bakery, a tiny one, made of moonlight and mist. No bricks, no beams, just soft light stretched into shape, with windows that blinked open like sleepy eyes, and a chimney that puffed out sugar-scented clouds. It only appeared when the world was quiet enough to notice. And it belonged to a fairy named Tilda Sugarplume. Tilda Sugarplume was not a tall fairy. In fact, she was barely the height of a marmalade jar. But she carried herself with the energy of someone 3 times her size and twice as busy. Her hair was the colour of honeycomb and usually tied up in a frizzy bun with a cinnamon stick pin. She wore a soft apron stitched from dandelion cloth, always dusted with flour that sparkled faintly in the moonlight. As the sun slipped behind the hills and stars began to stretch and yawn, Tilda twirled through her nightly routine. The teacups out, ovens warm, lullaby spoons stirred. She sang, fluttering from one floating shelf to another. The teacups, each one hand-painted with a sleeping animal, floated obediently to the prep table. The ovens blinked awake like cosy creatures. Her spoon, a slender thing carved from dreamwood, stirred itself in a bowl of pale blue batter. "A tonight's menu," she announced, tapping her wand against a chalkboard. "Snorberry tarts, nap-nut puffs, and maybe, just maybe, a crumb of cloud bread if it rises nicely." A sleepy voice yawned from behind a stack of biscuit tins. "You always say that, and it never rises." Clouds aren't meant to be kneaded. It was Mr. Muffle, a chubby little creature shaped like a hedgehog and a raisin roll combined. He wore a tea cosy as a hat and was Tilda's unofficial assistant, mostly by accident. "I believe in second chances," Tilda said, winking, "even for stubborn clouds." Tilda paused in front of a high shelf tucked into a nook of glowing mist. It held dozens of tiny glass jars, each sealed with a rose petal cork and labelled in looping script. A baby giggle hedgehog, Tuesday evening as naught chipmunk, mid-dream, warm, socks a whiff of a sleepy laugh-owl chick. After hot cocoa, she chose 3 jars carefully, holding them up to the moonlight streaming through a window made of spider silk. The contents shimmered inside. Not quite solid, not quite air. They sparkled like bubbles full of music. Mr. Muffle waddled over and squinted. "What flavour tonight?" Soft delight with a hint of memory. The owl chick's laugh will go perfectly with the Snorberry tart crust. She popped the cork. A faint, giddy giggle danced into the air, wrapping itself around the bowl and making the batter puff slightly. The whole room seemed to sigh with contentment. "People always ask how I make such dreamy pastries," Tilda said, gently folding the batter with a silver spatula shaped like a crescent moon. "They never guess the answer." "Because no one ever expects it to be laughter," Mr. Muffle muttered, licking a drop of glowing glaze off his paw. "Let alone the sleepy kind," Tilda chuckled. "Giggles are magic, the soft ones especially. They're more powerful than wishes. People laugh just before they drift off. When their hearts are light and their minds float, that's when dreams start." The bakery glowed with quiet joy. Warm light spilled across the soft stone countertop, pooling around rising dough and glimmering spoons. Outside, the trees swayed in rhythm to a wind that hummed a lullaby older than words. Tilda was midway through piping a swirl of stardust cream onto a nap-nut puff when she felt it. A strange flicker in the air, a momentary hush, not just quiet, but empty. She paused, mid-squeeze. "Did you feel that?" Mr. Muffle blinked from where he was curled inside a mixing bowl. "Feel what? Feel what?" "Well, that oddness, like the air held its breath." Mr. Muffle yawned. "You're imagining things. Maybe the dough sighed too loud," but Tilda's brow furrowed. She floated toward the shelf of giggle jars, wand raised. The bakery always thrummed with gentle magic. The flutter of laughter stored safely inside each jar. But now, something was missing. She reached for the next jar. It was cold and empty. Her wings twitched. She checked another, then another, all empty. Not one giggle sparkled. Not even a leftover giggle bubble clung to the cork. "And no," she whispered. "That's impossible." She turned wide eyes to Mr. Muffle. "But they're gone, every single giggle. Gone." He clambered up the bowl, eyes grown round. "Gone? How? No one comes in but us." Tilda's hands trembled slightly. "They didn't escape. They disappeared." Tilda hovered in the air, flitting from shelf to shelf. Her fingers moved quickly, uncorking jars and shaking them gently, as though a giggle might tumble out if she coaxed it kindly enough. "Empty," she muttered. "All of them. How can this be?" They were sealed. Sealed with dream thread and wish wax. That's supposed to be tamper-proof. Mr. Muffle waddled up beside her. Could they evaporated? Laughed themselves out? She shook her head, curls bouncing. Giggles don't vanish on their own. They settle, they rest, they don't just leave. A strange stillness pressed in on the bakery. Even the cloud-bread dough, which normally puffed and floated aimlessly like sleepy balloons, had sunk with a soft sigh. No giggles, no magic, and no baking. Tilda turned to the door. But there's only one thing to do. Mr. Muffle raised a paw. "A panic?" "No," she said firmly. "We go find them." "But it's night time," he exclaimed. "The forest is spooky. Remember last time you stepped in a puddle that whispered your secrets?" Tilda grinned. "All the more reason to bring a lantern and my boots." She zipped to the back room and returned wearing a travelling coat woven from morning mist, a lantern that glowed like a calm thought, and a tiny backpack stuffed with crumb cakes for emergencies. "I'm coming too," Mr. Muffle said, pulling on a pair of mismatched socks. Tilda nodded. Good. Good. We'll need your nose." And with that, the door of the bakery creaked open, and the two friends stepped into the cool, whispering dark. The moment they stepped outside, the door to the Moonlight bakery vanished behind them, just missed again. That was how it always worked. The bakery only existed when dreams did. It cast soft rings of gold over mushroom caps, mossy stones, and the twisted roots of dreaming trees. "Stay close," she whispered. "I'm not scared," Mr. Muffle lied. "Just alert, extremely alert." The forest was quiet, but not the good kind. It wasn't lullaby quiet, it was forgotten quiet. The kind of quiet you notice only after the music stops. Tilda tilted her head, listening. And no rustling, no snoring from the hedgehogs. "Even the fireflies are asleep early," she said. "That's not normal," Muffle murmured. They crossed a stream so shallow it hummed more than flowed. On the other side, the trees grew taller, their branches hanging like curtains. The air was thick with hush. "Let's try where the laugh flowers grow," Tilda suggested. They always attract giggles. They turned left at a glowing toadstool and followed the trail until they reached a tiny glade. Usually, the laugh flowers bloomed here. Wide, yellow blossoms that chuckled softly when the wind tickled them. Tonight, not a single flower bloomed. "Wilted," Tilda said, kneeling beside one. "They've never wilted before." Mr. Muffle gulped. "Tilda, what's happening to our forest?" Tilda gently cupped one of the drooping laugh flowers in her hands. It let out a tiny, tired sigh, like it had once known joy but forgotten how it felt. Her heart pinched. "They're not just wilted," she said softly. "They're sad." A faint rustle came from the underbrush. Tilda's wings twitched. Mr. Muffle ducked behind her boot. Out from the leaves hopped a tiny shape, round and soft, glowing faintly from the inside like a jar of fireflies left open. It was a glow toad, and not just any glow toad. "A pip," Hilda gasped. "Is that you?" The little toad blinked up at them, his golden glow pulsing like a heartbeat. "Miss Tilda?" He croaked, his voice small and echoing like a stone dropped in a still pond. "What are you doing out here?" she asked, crouching down to meet him at eye level. I couldn't sleep," Pip admitted, rubbing one eye with a webbed foot. "The forest feels wrong. It's too quiet." "Even my dreams didn't show up." Tilda frowned. "Yours too." Pip nodded. "So I came looking. I thought maybe you'd know what was going on." "We were hoping you might," Mr. Muffle said, stepping out from behind Tilda's coat. "Giggles have gone missing, and without them, nothing works." Not dreams, not baking, not even nap-nut puffs. Pip's glow flickered. I might have seen something strange. Tilda leaned closer. "Strange how?" "I saw shadows," Pip whispered. "Moving where no shadows should be. They didn't belong to anything." Tilda's wings stiffened. Shadows that don't belong to anything," she repeated. Pip nodded, his glow dimming to a flicker. "I was by the shimmer pond, just after dusk. There was no one there. Not a fox, not a bird. But I saw shapes move across the water. They were like shadows with no source. Mr. Muffle shivered. But that's not the sort of thing we like to hear at bedtime. Did they do anything? Tilda asked, voice low. No, Pip said. They just drifted, slow and quiet. But the air got cold, the pond stopped humming, and the trees, well, they stopped listening. Tilda stood up, thoughtful. Ooh, the shimmer pond reflects magic. If something disturbed it, that could be where the giggles went, or what frightened them off. She glanced around the glade, taking in the droopy laugh flowers, the stiff, silent trees. But it's all the way past the puddle of regrets, Mr. Muffle exclaimed. You know that puddle talks too much. We'll be quick, Tilda said. Besides, it's the only lead we have. She looked down at Pip. Will you guide us there? The little glow toad gave a brave nod. Yes. But we'll need to stay on the soft trails. The louder ones wake up the forest. And so, the three of them set off again, stepping gently over mossy stones and between roots that curved like sleeping arms. The woods seemed to watch them, not in fear, but in waiting. Something old was stirring. When? And it had silenced the giggles. The forest deepened as they moved forward, not in darkness, but in memory. Every tree seemed older here. Their bark was wrinkled like ancient smiles, and their roots curled over the path like soft-sleeping dragons. This trail wasn't here before, Mr. Muffle whispered, glancing nervously around. I swear it wasn't. And that's because we're on the path of forgotten footsteps, Pip said, hopping ahead with a glow that painted dappled golden light on the moss. It only shows itself to those looking for something lost. Tilda raised her lantern. The path shimmered under her feet. Not made of dirt or stone, but faded footprints that gently glowed. Big ones, small ones, bare feet, paws, hooves, and the occasional jelly bean-shaped print that no one could identify. Whose footsteps are these? She asked softly. All kinds of folk, Pip replied. Anyone who's ever lost something so small they almost forgot to miss it. A hush fell over them. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. I wonder, Tilda murmured. And maybe the giggles didn't vanish. Maybe they wandered here the way forgotten things do. Mr. Muffle's ears drooped. Do you think they want to be forgotten? No, said Tilda. I think they're hiding, scared. And we need to find them before they disappear completely. They followed the glowing prints deeper into the woods, where the trees leaned close and the moonlight thinned like spun thread. And just ahead, something shimmered, a flicker of silver blue light across still water. The shimmer pond, Pip whispered. We're here. The shimmer pond lay in a clearing shaped like a quiet thought, wide, still, and smooth as satin. Moonlight spilled across its surface, weaving silver ribbons through the mist. It should have looked peaceful, but it didn't. The water didn't ripple. It didn't hum, and the reflections it held were wrong. Tilda leaned over the edge of the pond and gasped. That's not me. Mr. Muffle waddled up beside her, squinting. Yes, it is. Same hair, same fussy expression. No, look closer, she said, pointing. I'm not moving. I'm right here, but my reflection isn't copying me. Pip peered over the edge, his glow casting golden ripples across the water. His own reflection blinked, and then vanished altogether. Gone, he whispered. It just slipped away. Tilda stepped back, holding her lantern high. This pond reflects the magic of the woods. The laughter, the stories, the unspoken dreams. If the reflections are broken, then something is stealing the truth of things. Mr. Muffle finished quietly, stealing the feelings behind them. They stood in silence, the weight of the still air pressing gently against their skin. Even the fireflies that usually danced over the pond were absent. Then Tilda spotted something strange, a ripple in the centre of the water, though nothing had touched it. Slowly, carefully, she stepped toward the edge again. A whisper met her ears, faint, flickering, like a laugh held too long. They're here, she said. The giggles, they're trapped. Beneath the surface. But how do we reach them? Pip asked, trembling. Tilda took a deep breath. We find the thing that stole their joy. Tilda knelt at the water's edge, staring into the strange too-still pond. It reflected no stars now, only murky grey and trembling hints of something just below the surface. She held her breath. There, flicker. A flicker of movement. Too large to be a fish, too smooth to be roots. Mr. Muffle stepped cautiously behind her. It could be something nice, like a very large misunderstood jellyfish. Pip didn't answer. He was staring, wide-eyed, at a shape forming in the pond's middle, long and shadowy, with gentle curves that slid like smoke. It circled lazily, as though it was, listening, Tilda reached into her satchel and pulled out a jar, one of the empty ones. She uncorked it and held it out. Sometimes you don't have to catch magic, she whispered. Sometimes you invite it. The shadow paused. The air went still. Then the water shifted. A bubble rose, then another. A dozen tiny giggles, tired, muffled, barely there, floated up and gathered around the jar like dust motes in moonlight. Weena, they're trying to come back, Pip breathed. They want to come home. But something else followed them, a darker swirl. It didn't laugh, it didn't whisper, it just watched. Tilda squinted, her brow furrowing. Who are you? The swirl pulsed and the giggles darted backward, hiding in the reeds. It's not a thing, she said softly. It's a feeling. What? Mr. Muffle asked. Tilda stood up slowly. It's sorrow. The shadow below was made of silence, of lonely moments, forgotten joys. It hadn't stolen the giggles, it had absorbed them, grown fat on the silence they left behind. The pond pulsed again, not with light, but with emotion. A heaviness rippled across its surface like a sigh that had nowhere to go. Tilda took a cautious step closer. It's not a monster, it's a memory. One that stayed behind too long. Pip's glow dimmed to a soft flicker. A memory of what? She didn't answer at first. She simply closed her eyes and listened, not with her ears, but with her heart. And then gently, it came to her. I think it's the memory of a laugh that was never shared, she said. Something someone held on to, a giggle locked away. And over time, it grew lonely, heavy. It forgot what it was. The water rippled gently as if in response. Mr. Muffle sat down, suddenly thoughtful. You mean like a joy someone didn't feel brave enough to let out? Tilda nodded. Or a happiness someone didn't believe they deserved. The shadow in the pond began to rise, but slowly, as if unsure of itself. And then they saw it. Not a monster, not a ghost, but a shape, shifting, formless, with blinking eyes made of old laughter. Its body was stitched from moments that had never been spoken aloud. It didn't growl. It didn't attack. It simply ached. Tilda knelt by the pond's edge again and whispered, You're not alone. You were never meant to carry all of that. A single quivering giggle bubbled from the water, soft, unsure, like a child remembering how to laugh. The shape trembled, and for the first time, it let go. The little giggle that rose from the pond shimmered in the air, a fragile, wobbly thing. It hovered uncertainly, as if unsure whether it had permission to exist. Then it drifted toward Tilda and gently nestled against her cheek like a warm drop of joy. She smiled. Not a big smile, just a soft, grateful one. The kind that makes the corners of your eyes crinkle and your shoulders relax. And in that moment, the shadow in the pond sighed. Not in anger, not in fear. In relief, a ripple spread outward across the water. Not cold this time, but warm. Silver and soft, it rolled over reeds and rocks, washing through the clearing like a blanket unfolding across the world. Mr. Muffle blinked as a small chuckle escaped him. Oh, that wasn't on purpose. Tilda turned to see a bubble of laughter rising from his belly. Another giggle floated up beside it, this one brighter, lighter. Pip gave a tiny squeak of joy as one giggle, then two, rose from him, glowing gold and fizzy like sunrise in a bottle. The pond reflected everything now. Not broken, but blooming. Its surface sparkled with colours they hadn't seen in ages. Joy silver, comfort blue, giggle gold and dream rose. The shadow faded beneath the surface, not destroyed, but calm, smaller, softer. I think it just needed someone to remember it kindly, Tilda said. She opened her jar and let the new giggles drift in, swirling with sleepy laughter and a little sniff of hope. Then, lifting her wand, she whispered, Our time to go home. The forest was different now. Where before there had been silence, now there were sounds, soft and shy. A hedgehog sneezed in the underbrush. Crickets stitched lullabies through the grass. Even the trees seemed to stretch a little taller, their branches rustling with relief. Tilda walked at the front, lantern swinging gently at her side, glowing like the first cosy thought before sleep. Mr. Muffle trotted beside her, humming a tune he hadn't remembered in years. Pip bounced behind them, puffed up with pride. They're following us, Pip said, looking over his shoulder. And indeed they were. Dozens, maybe hundreds of tiny glowing giggles floated between the trees, bobbing and drifting like soap bubbles full of dream. Some were bright and new, others faint and old, carried lovingly through the dark. But they remember where home is, Tilda said with a smile. They just needed someone to remind them. The path beneath their feet curled around a bend lined with whispering ferns. The glowing footprints of the forgotten path faded as they walked. not out of fear, but because they were no longer needed. Mr. Muffle paused by a cluster of laugh flowers. They were blooming again, slowly, sleepy yellow petals unfolding as if waking from a very long nap. He gave one a gentle poke. It chuckled, just a tiny snort of amusement, and he chuckled back. "You know," he said, "it's quite nice to be walking towards something again." Tilda nodded. "Oh, we're almost there." The Moonlight Bakery was waiting. As they stepped through the trees, the bakery appeared like a dream remembered mid-slumber, soft-edged and glowing with gentle light. It looked just the same. Crooked chimney, honey-coloured stone walls, shutters shaped like sighing hearts. But something had changed. It felt awake. The door creaked open as they approached, not with its usual moan, but like a yawn followed by a sleepy smile. "We're back," Tilda whispered, stepping over the threshold. The moment her boots touched the floorboards, the air shimmered. The lanterns flickered to life. The teacups on the shelves gave a polite clink of greeting. Even the bell above the door let out a warm ding and a sleepy welcome back. One by one, the giggles drifted through the open door and swirled up toward the rafters. They danced in the warm air, not in a rush, not in a panic, just floating as if reacquainting themselves with their old home. And then a pop came from the kitchen, followed by another and another. Tilda hurried in to find the oven glowing golden trays rattling slightly as if eager to be used. The mixing bowls were spinning in lazy circles on their own. The air filled with the scent of cinnamon, warm butter, and a hint of vanilla moon dust. "They remember," she gasped. "The bakery remembers." Mr. Muffle sniffed the air, eyes wide. "Do I smell nut puffs and giggle tarts and giggle tart?" Pip added, leaping into a bowl and scattering flour like snowflakes. Tilda laughed, a real round laugh that filled the room with warmth. "Let's bake," she said. And just like that, the Moonlight Bakery opened again. Not for business, but for joy. The ovens purred contentedly as the last batch of giggle tarts rose, golden and airy, puffed up with laughter that had finally found its way home. Tilda dusted her floury hands on her apron and gazed around the kitchen, her heart full and steady. Everything was just as it should be, a little crooked, slightly glowing and warm with memory. Mr. Muffle was curled up in a large mixing bowl, snoring softly, a smear of custard on his nose. Pip had fallen asleep inside the sugar jar, blinking drowsily beneath a dusting of sparkle salt. Even the spoons lay still, as if they too had finished their dance. Outside, the night held its breath in that tender way it does just before dawn. Stars blinking sleepily, the trees humming lullabies, the air cool and crisp with promise. Tilda walked to the window and looked out. The giggles that had followed them home now drifted across the garden like fireflies. Some nestled into teacups on the windowsill. Others slipped into the dough, rising gently on the counter, sealing laughter into every swirl and fold. She lit one final lantern above the bakery door, a small thing shaped like a crescent moon, and whispered, "For wanderers, for wishers, for anyone who's forgotten how to laugh." The lantern glowed softly. As she turned to head up the narrow stairs to her tiny bedroom under the eaves, she paused to listen, not to the ticking clock or the settling wood, but to the very air itself. It was quiet, yes, but not empty. It was the kind of quiet that held story, the kind that tucked you in. She climbed into bed, pulling a quilt stitched with stars up to her chin, and looked out at the gentle moon one last time. It winked at her, as moons often do to bakers, and as her eyes fluttered shut, she smiled, because she knew, when morning came, there'd be laughter in every loaf, dreams in every tart, and a tiny bit of magic in every crumb. And the Moonlight Bakery would be waiting for whoever needed it next.